And if that's the case, we get a little thumbs up emoji. But let's talk about this. There, and if you got some commentary, you could totally make some of those updates. But let's see what's going on with the minimalist poster, and I'm going to open that up. Okay. So the rest of the class, basically, what's going to happen is that when you upload, keep those files handy, right, guys? Because what we're going to do is that we're going to basically build like a Google Slides digital portfolio at the end, and we're going to kind of put it all together into like a certain type of template. So just keep all your files handy. Don't delete anything. Just hold everything, put it into a folder, keep it all nice, settled, and organized. So then that way we can make those changes or have it ready for a portfolio when the time comes. So that way we're good, set, and ready to rock and roll. Okay. Now let me go ahead and open up the minimalist poster, and then we'll talk about that. So let me go ahead and set that up. We're going to retrieve the file and double click that. And we will get that going for us. Okay. All right. And while that's opening on my canvas, we'll direct you to also Canvas as well for the assignment post. So let me go ahead and retrieve that. Go home. And let's resume share on my screen here. And we'll open it up because it's taking its sweet time. Okay. Okay. And what I want to do is also take a look at the schedule to see how we're doing as well, because these last two projects will probably move a lot more quickly than the Mickey poster, but or the Mickey shirt, but they use the same tools and the same approaches, if that makes sense. So let me go ahead and open up the descriptions and the timelines just to see how we're doing. And something tells me that we're pretty close to being done. So we'll take a look at the timelines really quick. And okay, so yeah, so we're close. So we're pretty much at the end, almost to the end. So we have today 6, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more sessions left before we're done, which is wild because it feels like we've done a lot, and that's great. And minimalist poster and logo design is technically where we should be on the project. So this will probably be a quick run on the minimalist poster, and then logo will probably also, we'll put a little bit more time towards logo. However, logo we might actually do quickly depending on where everyone's at. So I feel like I think a good 2 weeks would be good, or at least this week, Thursday. The last date of our class, Francesca, will be on April the 27th, which is the final day of class where the final is due. And finals kick off here on the yellow, which is on, May 25th. So the way it works is that the week of finals, your schedule gets changed, right? Like when the finals week happens, it's we don't meet on Tuesday of the week of finals. What's going to happen is that we're not going to meet on that Tuesday. We're basically going to meet on that last day of class, which is Thursday, because Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, those are days that are specifically set up for finals so that they don't overlap. Yeah, 7 minutes there.
Oh, we're turning on 7 minutes?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Yeah. So we have that, right? So we have that gap. The reason why they have that is so that we're not having 2 finals in one night, right? Or multiple finals on the same day. So they kind of split it up. So that last week is kind of a weird week because we meet once. So technically, we're going to be basically going through class. We have this week, we have next week, and then the third week, and then after that, last week of class, we only meet one time, which is that Thursday. So yeah, it's gonna be a quick one actually, because what I'm kind of forecasting is we'll probably do the minimalist poster pretty quickly, maybe for up to like a week and a day, and then logo we'll do quickly as well, and then we'll leave the templating probably for homework. And the templating to create the poster or the portfolio is pretty easy. So it's not difficult to kind of build that portfolio, as it were. So really digital portfolio can be done in a weekend / we meet up on the last day of class. And then, but we'll probably need those 3 weeks to kind of push the minimalist poster and try to get the logo done right away. So that's kind of sort of our game plan, as it were. Okay. Because I do want to get at least about a week to a week plus session in for the minimalist poster, and then jump right into logo. So hopefully I answer that question for you. So the 27th is our last day of class. Okay. So that's it. Okay. So that's what we're looking like. I'm glad I was able to look at that. And when we go to our Canvas project list, basically the minimalist poster is like the Disney t-shirt, but we're adding a story to it. And as a matter of fact, you're given the story. Okay. So the way that this is going to work, and I'll pull up the movie poster here, is that if we look at minimalist poster design, essentially what we're going to do is that we're going to kind of create a roughly 24 by 36 poster, or 11 by 17 inches. It'll probably be 11 by 17 just for the sake of the project, but it's basically like a poster size project where we're going to basically watch these 3 films, right? And you pick one film to create a poster for. Okay. So the idea behind this, our objective, is to basically design a minimalist poster, right, using vector illustrations and principles of design. So think about everything we did with the Mickey shirt, and you're going to make a movie poster using those same tools and techniques. Does that kind of make sense? So I gave you a graphic, which is Mickey. Now you're going to try to give yourself the graphics, right? Which means we're going to need to find something that is going to be like a vector version of an element. Does that make sense? So you're kind of building it from scratch, the vector artwork. And I'm going to show you live trace or image trace, which actually helps us speed that process up by like 10 by a factor of 10, right? It moves very, very quickly. Okay. There's a lot of links available. These are mostly links from last semester where I talk a little bit about it. I feel like last semester we went pretty deep into the minimalist poster, whereas this semester we went pretty deep into the Mickey shirt, just to kind of help out and just factors and things of that sort that were happening. We'll talk about rubric, but basically I kind of run it specifically according to the rubric, but and I do have the lecture link there. But basically, some things we're looking for the poster when it comes to any movie or any poster in general is that we're looking for factors like principles of design. So is there a focal point, asymmetrical or symmetrical balance, right? Kind of what we did at the beginning of the semester where we talked about the principles of design. We'll be using that. Obviously, it's going to need a name. So we'll use typography, some principles of typography to kind of bring that into the poster. So we'll be selecting fonts that are communicative, that have meaning and symbolism behind it. Creativity, we'll definitely have a lot of that based on what I saw on the Mickey shirt, so that's great. And application of knowledge, everyone has an excellent application of knowledge because I guide you and you create. Work ethic, everyone's doing weekly work, so that's awesome. You're still with us, you're here, so that's great. And in terms of craftsmanship, presentation, that's basically just putting it onto an Illustrator file. Technical description, what and why. This is basically a one-page write-up. Really, it's a one-page, two-paragraph summary of how you created the artwork and principles of designs. In other words, it's basically principles of design for one paragraph and how would you created the graphics for the second paragraph. Okay, so there is a writing element to it as well. I might just shorten it to principles of design for the sake of time, and then that way you do like a technical analysis of your work. Okay. So that's how we'll be kind of bringing it together. I also have some sketch paper for movie concepts. So if you have a printer at home, you could totally print this. You can download this file, print it out, and do little doodles, really rough illustrations, pencil drawings, right? Stick figures. It does not have to be perfect. In fact, the uglier, the better. And this is a resource for you. So feel free to download this, print it out at home so you can create some thumbnail sketches of how you want elements to be and where you want it to go. Okay, so we'll be using that. So I'll keep that on screen there for so we can share the link. And I also give you some files, which is really nice. These are like fake little movie poster credits and the font for movie poster credits. It's called Steel Tongs. It's a helpful font that you can use and install, and it basically allows you to create like movie poster graphics and text if you want to type it in. But I actually make it even easier because I give you the actual Adobe Illustrator vector file where you can just copy and paste the copy in there. So you don't even have to type it in. You can basically copy and paste it into your poster and put it on the bottom there. Okay, so that's very nice. That's very helpful. So that's all ready to go, and it makes a huge difference too once you have that available for the project. So that's really, really helpful. Okay, so then here's what we'll do. We're at the top of the hour. I will share the presentation about minimalist poster of the lecture after we take a break, if that's okay with everybody. Okay. And then what we'll do, and I won't replace any of that. We'll talk about the minimalist poster. We'll talk a little bit about theory, history, everything of that sort. Okay. And then we'll play some of the documentaries tonight. As a matter of fact, I think what I'll do is that the documentaries are online, so I'll have you guys watch it at home while I work with packaging design, and then we'll basically start developing thumbnail sketches for the remainder of the night. Okay, so we'll take a break. We'll take like a 5-minute break, then we'll do lecture. Okay, and then I'll have you guys start watching the 3 different films. You pick one to design for your poster. Okay, and then we can start developing some concepts, thumbnail sketches, go forward from there. Okay, is that gonna work with everyone? And if it is, a little thumbs up emoji, and then we can kind of get it going for you. Cool. Okay. All right, guys. So let's go ahead and take a break, 5 minutes. All right, and then when we get back, we'll do lecture, and we'll be ready to rock and roll. I'm gonna send a message to our folks in packaging design and send a message to everyone. Okay. Take a 5-minute break. Okay. All right, guys. We'll see everyone in about 5 minutes. I shall return. Let's talk. Okay. No, better close that. Get the green screen closed. There we go. All right, guys. So welcome back. And let's take a moment to talk a little bit about the minimalist poster exercise. Okay. Now, one of the things that I think I'll kind of reiterate is that we're going to try to go through this exercise hopefully within about a week's time. So I think that's going to be, I'm thinking about maybe two sessions would be ideal, maybe 2.5 if we take the first hour of the following week, if that helps. So yeah, I think that they'll probably be most likely the way we'll go about doing that. Okay. Now, I always like to start off with a comparison of two movie posters. So let me go ahead and share that with you so you can see it. And then we'll take a look here. Now, okay, I live in a world where not everyone knows this movie. So let me just ask the question. Has anyone not seen Rocky? Like, if not, doesn't know what it is, or hasn't really seen it, or doesn't know the story, that just doesn't know that. Maybe you can give me a little thumbs up emoji or things of that sort, and they have not seen it. Okay, totally cool. Okay, that's a reality. Jesus, you were saying?
Oh, nothing. I was just waiting for you, sir.
Oh, okay, no worries. Okay, so has anyone seen? Okay, so Francesca, you haven't seen it. Have you seen any of the movies or know about any of those films? Just out of curiosity, just kind of get a little bit of a a brief storyline if you have a rough idea what the storyline is. And if not, that's okay. I can kind of summarize it really quick in like 2 seconds. But you can totally type it in the chat there. But essentially, the film is it's a boxing film. So the first one came out in '79, if I recall, and it's basically Sylvester Stallone's first like film, and basically the film that he created was his very first film ever that he's ever created, right? And so he wrote the script, and it was sort of his first attempt at it. Nobody wanted to make the film, and then eventually the script was getting popular, or he was able to get. He was basically shopping it around, and he finally got it picked up, and they turned it into a movie. But they didn't want him to be in the film. They wanted to just buy the script off of him, and they would go with somebody else. And he's like, no, I got to be in this movie. I wrote it. This is a personal film, so I have to be in it, direct it, everything of that sort. And they basically, offered all this money to him to do it. And in the end, he basically wrote this like legendary, iconic film, which is really a film about like the like sort of like America in a sense, or like the impression of America, which was sort of like like you fight for your dream, and no matter how hard life gets, then you still have to kind of get back up and go for it. So I don't want to make it too much of a spoiler, but basically the story goes is that there's a character named Rocky who is sort of like this this sort of uneducated guy that likes to box, and there's another character named Apollo Creed who's like this world heavyweight champ boxer, and both these guys are in like a stagnant place in their careers. Apollo has won so many fights that there's really nobody out there that's like worth his time, and Rocky's just wants a shot at somebody that's worth the fight, right? He just wants an opportunity to kind of go up against the best, and through like a series of circumstances and events, they basically end up connecting, and Rocky's picked simply because he's Italian, and because the great fighters were these Italian boxers that fought with other people from other countries and other races, and so that they were basically trying to like create this sort of newspaper, this sort of newspaper headline that, this guy's going to fight this fighter and it's going to be like the classic fights, right? With no expectation that Rocky's going to win. But in the end, Rocky ends up actually surprising and shocking everyone because he's actually talented and he's a good fighter, and he pretty much loses, but he didn't lose by knockout. The guy basically withstood a fight for like 12 rounds, and in the end the people like loved him because he was like the true underdog. So this movie is really a story about being an underdog and being given an opportunity to shine and to live your dream. And then I didn't know this, I think it won Best Picture in 1979 too. And it was kind of like a debut movie for Sylvester Stallone. And then the second one was just as good as well. And it's basically like Rocky trying to like work with all the success, and he fights Apollo again in a rematch. But in the end, it ends up being him winning. So it wasn't, I need to just finish the fight or just stay standing from that fight. Now I want to win the fight. Like now I want to actually go towards it. So they're pretty cool films. I would definitely recommend it if you guys haven't watched it. But you kind of get a little bit of you get to see a very different America back in the late 70s. And that's kind of the story. So when you see the movie posters, again, nobody knows Sylvester Stallone, right? And nobody knows like the story and what it's all about. So the question is like, okay, well, which one of these tells the story? Like which one of these graphics or these posters seem to tell the story better? Would it be the one on the left, or is it the image on the right? Based on just how I've described it. What say you guys? Would you say it's poster number 1, or would you say it's poster number 2? Like, do you have a favorite? If it is, go ahead and type it in, and we get a little bit of a vote there, just to see what you go for, right? There's really no one is better than the other, but if one told a story, then which one would probably tell the story better than the others? And yeah, most people would say I like the poster 2, or I like both of them. And then you could even make the case in the argument like, well, Professor, it's like, people, if this is like a poster that came out later and everyone knows Sylvester Stallone, then it's the celebrity that sells the film. And I agree with you that there's movies that are made which it's all about the star, and people they want to see the actor and they put the actor's face on it. But if it's like an unknown actor, an unknown person, new actors, newcomers, and you didn't have the star appeal, then all you have really is design. And
I would say poster number 1 for me, Jesse, just because, or Jesus, just because Sylvester Stallone already has a black eye, and then it's his love interest or companion there, or it's embracing him. So, and then of course he has a down look on his face, and with sweaty hair as well. So, and he's shirtless. So something happened for him to be in that state. As for poster number 2, I could see that he's in kind of like victory mode or triumphant mode, but aside from the blue letters and the red horizontal lines and the red silhouette there of Rocky, it doesn't really tell me what the movie's about much. I think the picture tells me slightly more as opposed to the graphic.
Now that's a good point. I'm glad you mentioned that, Jesus, because now we're actually sliding into something called semiotics, right? Or the symbol, right? And that's kind of a little bit of what this project is about. Is like a photograph can say a lot, and it does. And we've heard Jesus basically say, hey, look, we have we have his black eye, we have, you know, without a shirt. Like these things say something, right? And they do. And that's, and you could even argue that's like very much Photoshop, right? Like when we do Photoshop and we design in Photoshop, we use photographs to tell stories, right? So Illustrator is a little bit more on the illustration side. And so we're going to take a little bit of a look in terms of like how we can talk in symbols symbolically with Illustrator or vector graphics. So that's kind of what the minimalist poster is all about. Okay. So we'll start off with this slide, less is more. Okay. And this poster is a minimalist poster for the film, a Disney film Snow White. And so the question is, do you see the apple core or do you see the two faces in the negative space, right? Well, it looks like a female on the left, male on the right. And you might see both, right? But we have an interesting vector image and we see two things in one, right? And that's kind of an interesting poster, but it's definitely less is more, okay? Minimalist design, we actually take a little bit of inspiration from some great designers that are out there. So before I go into like Saul Bass mode, let me just kind of ride out this idea of less is more, okay? Picasso, great famous artist, everyone knows. Perhaps you've seen this image at some point, but this is basically an illustration that Picasso drew that kind of explains a little bit of the way he sees the world, right? You know, when he draws something, he can definitely draw something very photorealistic or very lifelike or close to actual. But then he can also reduce down its major parts to basic lines and forms to kind of create what looks like a symbol of something. It's not exactly that, but it's a representation of that. It's a symbol of that. And so those simple lines, those simple forms, they kind of create this sort of abstract image that represents something, right? And so this ability to go from like what you see is what you get to something that is a little bit more abstract, surreal, dreamlike, is kind of where we're heading in this project a little bit. So how do we show symbols through graphics? How can I tell essentially two different ideas in one poster, right? Here's an image. Okay, if you had to take a guess, what movie would you say this is? For those of us that are somewhat of a movie buff, right? Okay, Swan Lake. Okay, close. Black Swan. Yeah. That's the film Black Swan. Okay. And how do we know? Well, literally we see a swan. It's not an actual swan, it's an abstraction of a swan. It's a surreal image of a swan with the image of a dancer in the middle. This kind of reminds me of what Evelyn did with the Mickey graphic, right? Like one of her Mickey shirts was like the ears, and then inside was like this space where the silhouette of the characters were. Very similar, right? So Evelyn's already kind of thinking along the lines of that project, right? So that's Black Swan. How about this one? Scroll down so you don't see it so much, but what show do you think this is? It's a television show.
I want to say I don't know if it's a show, but I could have sworn I saw this in The Ugly Side of Truth.
Okay, so that's one interpretation out there. And Dre says 2.5 Men. So yeah, there's a show that was with popular show. I think it was like in the early 2000s, I would say, called 2.5 Men, right? Okay, what about this one? Over towards the right a little bit. What movie is this? Whoop, darn, gave it away. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's right, Elizabeth. This is Forrest Gump, right? You see all the little graphics of different elements from the film Forrest Gump. Okay, here's an interesting one. This is an 80s film. If you remember this or ever saw, well, it started off in the 80s, but it's been adapted throughout the years. But if you had to guess where this image came from, I'll give you a hint. Arnold Schwarzenegger starred in it at one point. There, yeah, that's right, Dre. Terminator, or excuse me, not Terminator, Predator. So, and if you ever saw that film Predator, it's about a alien, sort of like predator basically from another planet, and he goes after humans, and he has like this little laser device. But it's kind of part of his sort of like his laser icon sort of piece there, right? So, not so much Predator Lake, but the idea is kind of there, right? We have design, and we have these sort of abstract images, and these images are supposed to kind of lend us towards a certain idea. So, kind of going back to what we talked about a little bit, right? Like the objective for the project is basically to design a minimalist poster, right? A poster that says something with as few graphics as possible, right? And when we try to say something, especially a story from a movie with few graphics as possible, we have to get pretty creative in terms of like how we're going to communicate those images. And so, not everyone thinks in the same way, right? So graphics don't necessarily come out in the same manner either, right? If I were to say design a duck, some people will design a duck much differently than others. Like someone might design a duck like you see on the image on the left, using the same cutout triangles from a piece of paper, and they would create that duck on the left. And then some people would create a duck like the image on the right. Again, same shape, same form, right? But they'll structure it differently, make it look slightly different. It's still a duck, right? But it's how you interpret it. So this project is definitely is going to be an interesting project because it's going to be how you interpret the story using your own sort of source graphics. Okay. And when it comes to like just problem solving, psychology does help, and I don't try to get too deep into the psychology of it, especially around this stage. But at the end of the day, when you're designing something, you, at least for this project, you could ask yourself certain questions like, what is it that I remember from the film, and what do I want people to remember from it that I remember, right? How am I gonna like get their attention? Like, what's gonna be my focal point for my design? The focal point is the attention grabber. It's sort of the thing that tells the story, right, in one image. What is going to be my focal point on it? Like, how am I going to grab the viewer's attention? And then once you kind of figure that part out, memory and attention, then it comes the problem solving, right? Like, so, now that I know what I want to say and how I want to, use my focal point, how am I going to technically draw it out? And what colors am I going to use? And how am I going to lay it out in such a way that looks visually interesting? That's the planning and problem solving side. So when it comes to design, most people that are not familiar with our world don't realize that there is a level of like deep thinking that goes into it. That it's all of these four circles happening at the same time, right? I'm solving the problem, whether it's strategically this big concept or specifically a certain element or graphic in my tool set, right? I'm trying to plan it out accordingly, right? To do doodles and illustrations to see what might be an interesting layout. And then how am I going to get their attention? What's the focal point, right? Like what is going to get their attention, and not only get their attention, but have them remember my design? How are they going to, how abstract is it going to be to a level that's going to be visually interesting for the viewer? these are some pretty big questions when we design, and most people don't realize that this is stuff that's going through our heads constantly as we're going through the process of designing images, right? It is a lot of psychology and a lot of problem solving happening in multiple times at multiple stages, sometimes all at once. So you will feel like this as you work on this project, and you probably felt like this in the Mickey project at one point. But this is pretty much how projects kind of roll out in the life of a designer, which I thought was really funny, right? People will always start out with number one, feel like number three, and then eventually end up in number six. And our goal as designers is to try to get through, try to not get stuck on three or four, and basically persevere to five and six. And so there is a little bit of like, what am I going to do? How am I going to do this? But if you keep at it and you start thinking about that problem and start to think laterally or figure out different ways to solve it, you will end up in a better place with like five and six. So that's kind of the creative process from an emotional standpoint, I would say. Okay, basic shapes can elicit thoughts and responses. So like I said, abstract shapes and forms do help, but we're not going to worry about that so much. I do kind of want to share a little bit about a particular artist and designer, just to give you a little bit of an inspiration, because the person that kind of put this all into our world of design was a designer named Saul Bass. And I don't know if anyone's ever heard the name before, but Saul Bass is also a very respected, known designer from our design history. And he started off making graphics and illustrations, logos, and then he kind of evolved into the movie scene and sort of created the first movie title. So in the beginning of movies, you know how in the beginning of a movie or now in Netflix shows, there's like this very artistic sort of intro that kind of gives you this sort of peek into the world of the film, sort of like the opening credits, and there's art and motion graphics and type and things like that happening in the design. Saul kind of made it, brought that into fruition. Before him, you just started a movie like you would see in the 50s, like just a background, and here you see, boom, this the name of the movie, and you get into the scene of the film, right? And it just kind of, that was it. Saul was able to kind of put graphics and create these abstract drawings, and then he animated them and started moving those images. So he would first start with like a still or a graphic, and then he realized, well, if I do multiple stills of these images, then I can kind of stitch together a story, and I can kind of give the viewer a little bit of a sneak peek or prepare them for this world or this film they're about to jump into. And so he delivered some really powerful messages, not only through the animation, although that does apply and that does matter, but he also did some really powerful images just statically alone, flat on a two-dimensional surface, right? And so he was able to piece that together and create these amazing images and to tell a story, right? And so he used minimal shapes and forms, but when he put those minimal shapes and forms together, they kind of had this story or symbolism with meaning behind it. And that's kind of where we get our minimalist poster project from, and really this sort of genre of design. Again, he had this great ability to capture mood and feelings and animate them, but it all started out with these sort of abstract shapes and forms that were not animated. They were just still graphics and images. And the way he designed his posters are still influenced even to this day. But these are some examples of his posters that he did for these films. Alfred Hitchcock, right? Vertigo. Again, what do you do if you don't have the photograph of the star, right? Then how do I tell the story? Well, I'm going to use images, drawings, graphics. to kind of give you a little bit of a peek into this world. So he would use these abstract lines, abstract shapes, abstract forms to kind of tell a story like in vertical. So he used repetitive lines to create a swirl, which kind of is a symbol for vertigo, the feeling of motion and unbalance, right? And then two characters, black and white, that represent two opposing characters or two opposing figures. One's good, one is evil. And essentially this battle that erupts in the midst of the vertigo, right? So you kind of get that interpretation. I'm using principles of design at this point, right? Anatomy of a murder, right? When a murder happens, there's the chalk on the pavement or the sidewalk, right? So he kind of did this sort of similar graphic where it was like the outline of the body, which kind of reminds me a little bit of like, this is the scene of where the person died. But then he has like these body parts or limbs, and they're very abstract shapes and forms. But it almost looks like, this person is like been, killed, murdered, dismembered, maybe cut, because these basic abstract shapes are of a person are not together. They look like they've been disassembled, right? Even the font is the fonts in these posters are having a little bit of like a disorder to them, right? So even his font selections told something or said something and had a symbolic meaning behind it, right? So we get these images and these posters that he's created, and some of you have seen these, like West Side Story is a very popular one. He designed the poster for West Side Story, right? But in all these images, rarely do you see the star, right, of the graphic. But there's still something that's being said in the layout and in the design of the poster. It has some type of meaning behind it. And so these drawings are really just symbols, and they're simple shapes, forms that represent these symbols and images. Now, I'm also going to qualify that and say that not everything is flat and symbolic and outlines. There are some photos integrated. There are some detailed images of stars. There are some detailed drawings of things and photographs, right? So we're not living in a completely, flat world. Like there might be times where in your project you might have to get a little bit more detail oriented, right? Just enough detail to tell me what the story is, but not so much that it's the actual like CG of the film or the computer graphic being brought into the poster, if that makes sense. So how much is enough is the question. Okay. And then of course, his influence has spanned throughout the decades. So Sal Bass is on the left. And then we have a poster from, I think, Precious, which is, I want to say within the last 10, 15 years, it was released. But again, same idea, right? We see this outline figure of a person. And then in the negative space, we see this hand that's sort of like invading this person as well. So it's kind of like doing this sort of thing. So, this is a story about a girl that's been sexually abused. It's been abused emotionally and physically. How do you show that, right? Well, one way is to kind of use these abstract forms and to kind of give us this impression or symbolism of a hand grabbing the other person or violating this other person. It's not exactly the story, but you're giving me a sort of a peek into the meaning of the film, and that's kind of what this project is about. What are these films that you're about to see about, and how do you symbolically, abstractly in a way, show that story or the theme of the movie or what the movie is about to a viewer? Okay, so it's a good challenge, but I think it's a great opportunity to kind of showcase some of your design work. Okay, so what's going to happen now is that we're going to give everybody a chance to watch these films. Okay, we normally would watch this in class, but I'll give everyone a chance to watch it at home on your own time. But basically, the films that we have are 97%, which is a comedy. So this is a live action comedy, no words in it. There's Soar, which is a computer generated animated film. And then there is a documentary called Chicano, and it is a documentary about Japanese teenagers that are love Chicano culture to the point that they've replicated it in Japan. So it's a fascinating documentary too. But they're all Japanese, and they look like they're Latino from LA, so to speak. So there's these 3 films, okay, and they're going to be found on Canvas. So when you go to the Minimalist Movie Poster project, you'll notice below the objective that there are these 3 films, okay, embedded into it. So you can literally click onto it and play each film, okay? And you can watch them. And of course, you can even expand the screen with the button on the right here so you can check them out. But I encourage you guys to watch each one and pick one that you find interesting, and we'll go from there, okay? So yes, they're very interesting films, but watch the videos and select your favorite, and you can select your favorite film to design for that. But it's going to be one film that you're designing for, okay? So we're not making a poster of all 3. We're not doing that. We're going to watch all 3, and you pick one movie for a poster you want to design for, okay? So that's going to be the plan. That's how we're going to do that, okay? All right, and then once we're set, guys, then you'll have the remaining class time to basically start thinking about the theme of the film, what you like to create, and if you want to start downloading the Minimalist Movie Poster thumbnail sketch sheet, you can. If you have a printer at home, you can print it, or you can honestly just take a piece of paper, draw some rectangles like you see on my screen, and literally doodle some ideas of what primary graphic you want to create for the poster art. Okay. Last thing I'll share, because I feel led to kind of show you the steps, is that ultimately there's 5 steps when it comes to this project. And if I had to kind of summarize them, let's take a look. I want to make sure I give you the right slide. Okay. These would be the steps for this whole process, okay? So once we watch the film, we're gonna basically say to ourselves, okay, what's the theme of this movie? Okay, what is this movie about in one sentence? This movie is about right? That's the first step after we watch this film. The second step is that we're going to visualize that number 1 step using our poster or using our sketch graphics or piece of paper with rectangles drawn into that. So we're going to visualize some images that represent the theme of the film, okay? To which then it leads to step 3, where we're going to build it in Illustrator, okay, those graphics, and I'll show you 2 ways to do that. You know one, I'm going to show you the second way. And then the last step is to basically add that font to the film, and that font should be kind of like a representation of the theme as well in some way. So even the font you select will support the theme, and even the font style will say something in the meaning of the film, if that makes sense. Okay. So these are the steps to the project, and we're gonna try to run through this process quickly, so that we can start building the graphics and start designing them in the same way we did our Mickey graphic. Okay. So same approach, but this project is all about how I interpret the story. So this is more head storytelling than it is technical. There's technical, but you guys got through the technical now. Now we're going to start thinking about this and putting theory and concept to practice in addition to technical. Does that make sense? So that's how we're going to flow with this storyline. Okay. I know, pretty cool project, right? So we'll go ahead and we'll do that, guys. Feel free to stick around in the breakout room. Again, the lecture is also on Canvas if you want to see some of these slides. And I'll be with the packaging designers. So if there's a question, issue, or concern, feel free to send me a message, or you can email me, and I'll be more than happy to answer those questions. Okay? Does that make sense for everybody?
Professor Adaman?
Yes. Jesus, what's up?
For the credits, do we make up names or for these movies or that we're watching, or
No,
how do we populate them?
I will supply you with fake credits just to create the illusion. So we're only focusing on the graphic in and of
Graphic.
itself. So I will give you the credits are actually given to you, but they're really filler, and it's on also on Canvas as well. So I'll give you the credits, and I'll give you also some typefaces for those credits as well.
Roger that. Thank you.
Okay. All right, guys, enjoy. Make sure you take some notes as you're watching the film. If anything stands out, just put it down on paper somewhere and just keep an open eye, but also enjoy the films, okay? And then I'll circle back around at about 9:30. All right. But if you're already good and you feel like you're prepared, you can totally log out for tonight, and then we'll see you for next session on Thursday to discuss some of the concepts. But I would say watch the films, and then let's start developing at least some concept sketches using our thumbnail PDF file that's on Canvas. Okay, so we'll watch it, determine some themes, and maybe we'll design some. We'll get some sketches going, and we'll have some available for Thursday. Okay. All right. Enjoy. I'll be back. Okay. Hey guys, welcome back. So just wanted to check in before we closed out. And did we get a chance to see the films by any chance? And did we like them? I think that's the
I'm
question.
watching the Chicano one. I I know I wrote some comments already in the chat. It's just, it's mind-boggling, but it's, in colloquial terms, it's a trip.
Yeah.
That they like the LA Chicano culture that I'm used to. I think I want to say I won't generalize that most of us are used to it, but I definitely grew up amongst it, and of course I saw all the negative stuff about that. But
yeah, it's an interesting film. We'll definitely have a chance to talk about it for Thursday, if that's okay. Just because I don't want to interrupt the watching of it there, Jesus, but there's a lot to say about the film for sure. There's a lot of conversation that will come out of that, and I'm glad you're bringing that up now. Did anyone else complete the films yet, or better yet, anyone still watching the films? I apologize if I interrupted you watching your film. But Jesus, is anyone that has still watched or still continuing to watch? Okay, so everyone got a chance to see it for the most part. If you did get a chance to catch them, that's great. Great. And I would say if you have one film that you like, think about that, selecting one film out of the three, just only one, and then we'll start talking about themes. And if you wanted to start designing a couple of concepts on the thumbnail sketch, okay, similar to like the Mickey t-shirt, middle ground, foreground, background, right? Focal point, asymmetrical balance typically. We'll start thinking a little bit along those terms of a poster, okay? So if we want to get some thumbnail sketches down, that'll be perfect. And then we'll talk about theme concept, and I'll review the sketching process in class as well for those folks that were absent tonight. Okay. All right. Sounds good. So then let's take a look. So Emily, are we okay for tonight? Can we maybe schedule some time for Thursday to talk, or if you wanted to, we can do some office hours, perhaps tomorrow, if you're okay with that. I just wanted to see if you want to let me know in the chat. I know there was a couple things that we wanted to kind of go over on your graphics, but I wanted to make sure I can work around your schedule too. So hopefully that'll help. And then Evelyn, you got a little peek at some of the files and updates I did for your t-shirt design. So feel free to copy my comments and put that into your own work, and give that a shot for your designs too, okay? So those are all comments that you can set up and go that direction. Okay, we can set it up during class, Emily, if that helps. We can maybe talk during the break. I can give it about a 10 to 15 minute break, and we can go from there if that works for you. And hopefully we can go that direction. If it does, you can give me a little thumbs up emoji too, if that kind of helps. Okay, hopefully it does. So yeah, that should be fine. Now that you've sort of gotten the project, it's really going to be mostly work design time anyway. So we'll have a brief discussion about theme, meaning, we'll sketch away, design away, and then totally fine if you need to leave a little bit early. So that's cool. So sounds good. All right, awesome. All right, guys, beautiful. Well, thank you guys. I appreciate it. I'm glad the internet didn't crash on me tonight. So, and we actually had some time to start the next assignment and go forward from there. And for those of us watching the rebroadcast, please take a look at the presentation, watch the films, be ready for Thursday for us to review the design or to talk about theme and possibly do some thumbnail sketches in class, and review next steps on building your design for your poster, because it's going to be a quick one as well. All right, folks, ladies and gentlemen, have a good night. We will see you on Thursday. Happy Cinco de Mayo, and may the 4th be with you. wanted to set that up. That's awesome. That's the best way to finish. We'll see you then. Good night, guys. Be safe.